Okay, so in front of me, I've got two phones. On the left here, or on your right, I have the Galaxy S10e, which was released last year, and on my right, I have the Galaxy S20 Fan Edition. Now, the reason I have these two phones in front of me is because we're going to do a comparison between the two. A lot of people has been calling the S20 Fan Edition the new flagship killer, and it really just brought me back to the S10e, which is a phone that I actually daily drove, and it really felt like the S20 FE was more of a spiritual successor to the S10e than it was a flagship killer of sorts. They had similar price points and actually pretty similar concepts where they dropped features from the regular line, the S10e dropping features from the S10 and the S20 FE dropping features from the S20, while still having a significantly lower price point and having a pretty good bang for the buck value as far as performance and what you really got for the phone. So the question is the S20 FE a good successor to the S10e? Well, let's find out. All right, everybody, welcome back to Gadget Conquest, and for those of you that are new, welcome to Gadget Conquest. Anyway, what I really wanted to go over with these two devices today is actually the usability differences, because the S10e in my mind was really last year's like performance usability king. It had the Snapdragon 855, it had good cameras, it had a nice display, and it was a very, very small. This is a tiny device. And it was really the only device that had all of these things aside from, I don't know, like an iPhone, but like, who the heck wants an iPhone? So it really won my usability king rating last year for that. And I believe that the people who bought this device really were looking at one of two things. They were either looking at the price because it was $650, or they were looking at the usability because of the size, because of how small it is. And that's actually the factor that I want to compare these two phones on. This is by no way a full review of the S20 FE. Many other people who know much more about these devices have done full reviews. Go watch them. They've done a great job. What I want to talk about is just if you have an S10e now, or you were ever considering an S10e or a device like this that has good usability, then should you upgrade to the S20 FE? Is it a worthwhile venture for you? And does this device really serve as a spiritual successor to the S10e? That's really what I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to keep this video short. I have 3 points that I really want to go over. So I'm just going to get into the first point, and that is the build. So the S10e is a very thin device. It's very small. It's a glass sandwich. And the problem with that is the fact that because the rail, this like middle rail here, and I'll zoom in so that you can see that, this middle rail is pretty thick, it's pretty wide. And what that causes is the glass on the back meets it at a very close to 90-degree angle. And that actually causes a weird feeling when you have the phone in your hand, where actually, like, as you slide your hand around, you can sort of feel the edge where the glass meets the metal on both sides, and it does not feel good. It actually kind of hurts a little bit, especially after prolonged use, and you might even end up with some calluses, who knows. The S20 FE actually solves that issue by having a much tighter curve here on the plastic on the back, and as a result of that, the metal rail in the middle is actually much thinner. Now, that's probably not very good for durability's sake. It probably won't bend as well, but as far as the feel in the hand, as far as the usability goes, this is a much more usable device in that sense. It's actually much more comfortable in my hand, even though it's bigger. This phone is actually around the same size as the OnePlus 7T Pro, or the OnePlus 7 Pro, for example, since those are basically the same device. So it's actually a sizable device, but it is in no way less comfortable than the S10e was, and in a lot of ways it's actually more comfortable. The under-display fingerprint sensor is actually a good example of that. The S10e had a really nice capacitive sensor right here in the power button, but the problem is that because it was so high up, I actually had to reach my thumb up pretty high to get to it, and because of its location, having any finger other than my thumb on it was actually kind of dumb, like it felt stupid, and I ended up not registering any other fingers except for my right thumb. Whereas on the S20 FE, because it's under display right in front of you, I can register any single finger because as long as the display is up like this, I can just touch it with any of my fingers and know that it will easily be able to recognize any of them, whereas this was kind of more awkward. But that's really what comes down to as far as like comfort and in the hand feel. My second point that I wanted to get on was actually the cooling. So this phone had a Snapdragon 855, or has a Snapdragon 855. This phone has a Snapdragon 865. These are top of the line processors. They get pretty hot. They use quite a bit of power compared to the lower tier processors. And the problem that creates is heat, because hot. They use a lot of power, they create a lot of heat. This phone is very small. It's very thin, it's not very wide, not very tall, so there's not a lot of mass here, which means there's not a lot of space to cool the processor properly. And what ends up happening is that this phone gets really, really hot, especially in my hand. Sometimes in my pocket, if I update some apps and then lock it and just put it in my pocket, because it's like, forget it, it's just gonna update some apps. It'll get really, really hot in there. In fact, when I click the update all button on the App Store, if I have like 10 or more apps that need updates and I click update all, what will actually end up happening is the first app will start updating and the whole thing will just hang. It'll get really hot, and then like 30 minutes later, it'll be like, oh, by the way, all your apps finished updating. And it's like, okay, like you could have shown me them updating, but cool, thanks for telling me. And that's not cool. The problem that creates as well is if the device gets too hot, you actually have the potential issue of causing problems with the battery, because lithium-ion batteries are very susceptible to heat. They can degrade by heat, and if your phone gets really hot, then your battery gets really hot, and if your battery gets really hot, it loses maximum capacity, basically. This phone doesn't have that issue. It handles the heat perfectly. Now, it's probably because of the fact that it has much greater mass, it's taller, it's wider, it's thicker, and also probably because the Snapdragon 865 is just more power efficient. But at the end of the day, the results of that is that this phone does not get as hot. It does not get as hot, and because of that, it doesn't have these weird overheating issues where it'll hang during certain activities, or some apps that are way too demanding will crash. Those things don't happen, and that's a very, very important part of usability is, does your phone work 100% of the time? And the problem that I had with this phone was that I couldn't say, yes, this phone works 100% of the time. I couldn't do that because it didn't. And that was a big issue for me. Now, my third and final point is actually battery life. The battery life on this thing will get you through a workday. That's it. If you decide that you want to go out after work and you want to have some drinks with some friends, you need to bring a backup charger or charge this thing in your car or charge it at work. Do something, because this thing is not going to last throughout your drinking with your buddies. You're going to come home with a dead phone. And that's like guaranteed, basically. This thing does not last all day. It lasts all work day. This, on the other hand, the S20 FE, does last all day. After a work day, I still have 40, 45% battery, sometimes even 50% battery left over, and that is enough to allow me to comfortably go out without having to charge my device and go to work and go to a bar, have some drinks, or go to a restaurant, eat some dinner, come back home at midnight and still have 20 to 25% battery left. That's a pretty big difference as far as usability goes. Like, phones really come down to convenience, and these are three things that I think are really important for convenience, and battery life is probably the most important thing for convenience, because a phone that can't last all day is not a phone that I personally want to use. And I think that if you bought the S10e, my guess is that you're probably also a person who cares about having a battery that lasts all day. as you know, along with all of these other niceties that come with these phones. Now, there's also other differences, like the displays being 120 hertz versus 60 hertz, and the locations of the cameras and all of that nonsense. But those things are really minor details because these are more upgrades that are nice to have, but that you don't notice as much. What you really notice is those usability features of the day-to-day minutia, the little things that happen every day that can really bug you or really make your day. And I think that that is my conclusion here, is that anybody who had the S10e, if you're looking for a worthy upgrade to your S10e, I think that the S20 FE is that worthy upgrade. I think it is a good spiritual successor. It improves on all of those usability features while still being a good price phone. I believe it was $699 when it first came out, but people have actually been selling it at $599. And if you have an S10e, you can actually trade it in and get some money off. So I traded mine in. I still have it because I have a window in which I can send it in, and I'm not at the point where I need to send it in right now. I'll send it in after this video. I traded mine in on a special deal, and I actually got $400 off of the S20 FE, so I actually got it for $299, which is an amazing deal, especially for a phone like this. So if you have the phone, I definitely recommend doing that trade-in, or if you have the money to buy it outright, then I mean, go for it. I don't think that you would be, if you're going from this phone to this phone, I don't think that you'll be disappointed in the slightest. I honestly believe that it would be a worthy upgrade to this phone. And that's really the conclusion here is the S20e FE 5G a worthy successor to the S10e? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Double thumbs up. It does a good job. It really, I mean, it's not even advertised as a successor to the S10e. It's not, but really it is, and it does a really good job of being one. A lot of people are calling it a flagship killer. I don't care about that nonsense. I'm not interested in all of that stuff. I care more about the usability of it, and it really does a good job. So if you're looking for one, I will have the links for the products in the description, as I always do. And do not forget to like this video. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel. Do not forget to leave a comment if you have something to say. If you have this device, tell me, what do you think? Do you think you're going to be upgrading? Do you think that this is a worthy upgrade for you? Let me know in the comments. And that's basically it for me. I hope all of you have a nice day. All of you this time, especially you. The one in the back with, yeah, with the brown hair and the red shirt, you. Yeah, you. Especially you. You look like you've had a bad day. So have a good day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.